Victorian England had palaces and factories, but most homes didn't have a bathroom. Running water was a luxury for the rich. Ordinary people bathed once a week, if that. And the sewage? It went straight into the Thames River, the same place they got drinking water. Want to know how they survived? Subscribe to the channel. Number 1. In England in 1850, taking a bath was almost an event. Most people would go weeks without properly washing, using only a damp cloth on the essential parts. And it wasn't just poor people either. Even middle-class families thought that bathing too much was bad for you, that it opened your pores and left your body vulnerable to disease. Doctors back then backed up that idea. Personal diaries show that plenty of respectable people took a full bath once a month, at most. The water had to be heated on the stove and carried bucket by bucket. It was hard work. So the solution was perfume, lots of clothes and powder to cover up the smell. The stench in the streets of London? Better not even imagine it. Number 2. In Victorian London, having cold water at home was already considered a luxury for working people. But hot water? Forget it. You had to heat it on the stove, bucket by bucket. The result? A bath became a rare occasion, like once a week, if that. And here's the part that really hits. People stank. There's no other way to say it. The solution back then was to splash perfume on top or use scented powders to cover it up. Imagine a packed streetcar in the English summer. The Victorians came up with strict etiquette rules, but personal hygiene came later. Funny how a society obsessed with appearances lived with that stinky secret under their elegant clothes. Number 3. In the Victorian era, soap was for laundry, not for bathing. Most people thought plain water did the job of cleaning the body. Regular soap was made from animal fat and ashes, and it didn't smell good at all. The scented ones? A luxury item, only for people with money to spare. The result was predictable, hygiene that we'd consider pretty rough by today's standards. Doctors at the time were still debating whether getting your whole body wet was good or bad for your health. Number 4. Here's something that might surprise you. In Victorian England, having a bathroom inside the house was something only rich people had. Most families, including the middle class, used chamber pots or backyard latrines. The contents were dumped into open pits or simply thrown into the streets. The result was predictable. Outbreaks of dysentery and cholera devastated entire neighborhoods. The stench in the cities was so strong that Parliament even suspended sessions because of the stink from the River Thames. Only after thousands of deaths did London finally build a modern sewer system. Number 5. Did you know that before 1860, London dumped all its sewage straight into the River Thames? The same river that supplied the city with drinking water. The pipes were made with a loose stone bottom, so everything leaked out along the way. In the summer of 1858, the stench got so unbearable that Parliament almost closed its doors. They called it the Great Stink. It was only after that crisis that they finally decided to build a decent sewer system. Until then, walking through the streets meant stepping in a mix of mud and waste. Official reports from the time show that entire neighborhoods were wiped out by cholera and typhus. The truth is that the classy London from the books hid a pretty filthy reality. Number 6. Did you know Victorians were afraid of breathing bad air, thinking it caused disease? Meanwhile, they drank water mixed with sewage without suspecting a thing. Cholera swept through England 3 times between 1831 and 1854, killing more than 100,000 people. Doctors insisted the problem was the foul smell in the streets, until a man named John Snow decided to investigate on his own. He mapped the cases in London and found they all traced back to the same water pump. When he convinced the authorities to remove the handle from that pump, the cases dropped sharply. Snow proved the death was in the cup, not in the air. But it took years for the government to accept the truth and start cleaning up the water system. Number 7. In the Victorian era, doctors had a curious theory about bathing. Hot water? Too dangerous, especially for women. They believed the heat could weaken the body and even affect the mind. It sounds crazy today, but it was serious science at the time. The official recommendation was cold water. They said it strengthened the body and kept a person healthy. Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse, argued that fresh air mattered more than warm water. Her health manuals prioritized ventilation in bedrooms over any kind of long bath. For the upper classes, that meant ice-cold baths in the morning. For the poor, it meant almost no bathing at all. The result? A society that feared warm water hygiene while diseases spread through the cities. Number 8. In the Victorian era, taking care of your teeth was almost a luxury. Toothbrushes did exist, but they were handmade with pig bristles, nothing like what we use today. Toothpaste? A homemade mix of chalk, herbs, and sometimes even charcoal. With no fluoride and no regular brushing routine, cavities took over most people's mouths. And here comes the tough part. When the pain became unbearable, the solution was to pull the tooth. The problem? Until the end of that era, it was done without anesthesia. Just imagine sitting in a chair, fully awake, while someone yanks out your tooth with a metal tool. It was either that or live with the pain. That's why full smiles were rare on the streets of London. Number 9. In the Victorian era, broke families had a nasty secret for washing clothes: urine. That's right, they collected pee in buckets and used it as bleach. The science behind it? The natural ammonia broke down stains and whitened fabrics. This technique wasn't new. It went back centuries to when the Romans did the same thing. The problem is that nobody understood germs yet, so people were literally rubbing bacteria into their own clothes. Poor homes had a distinctive smell that gave the practice away. Visitors at the time described working-class neighborhoods as places where the air was almost unbreathable. And the craziest part? It worked so well that some commercial laundries used it too, just on an industrial scale. Number 10. In 1858, London went through the Great Stink. The Thames turned into an open-air sewer. The same water that supplied homes carried the waste of millions. Doctors at the time recorded outbreaks of typhus and cholera that swept through entire neighborhoods in weeks. The 1851 censuses reveal a brutal fact. People died twice as much in the cities as in the countryside. It wasn't bad luck. It was the price of progress without sanitation. Number 11. In Victorian England, being clean wasn't just about health. It was a statement of who you were. The middle class treated hygiene as proof of moral character. Etiquette manuals from the time recommended washing your face every day. But here's the detail most people don't know. For the poor, that was practically impossible. Clean water cost money, soap was a luxury item, and free time simply didn't exist when you worked 14 hours a day. So, while the rich judged workers for being dirty, the system made sure they could never be any different. Dirt became a social trap. You were poor because you were dirty, and you were dirty because you were poor. Number 12. In Victorian England, going to the bathroom was a serious problem. When the first public flush toilets appeared in the 1850s, it seemed like a revolution. But there was one catch. It cost a penny to use. That's where the expression "spend a penny" comes from, which the British still use today. For the working class, that penny was missed. The result? Alleys, back streets, and dark corners kept being the bathroom for millions. The smell in London streets was so strong that the summer of 1858 became known as the Great Stink. The stench from the Thames, full of sewage, even managed to interrupt sessions of Parliament. It took politicians smelling the problem for themselves to finally invest in decent sanitation. Number 13. In the Victorian era, getting that porcelain white skin was basically an obsession, and women paid a high price for it, literally with their own health. The face powders back then were real chemical bombs loaded with lead and arsenic. The result? Slow, gradual poisoning. Doctors at the time were already warning about the dangers, publishing articles in newspapers, making noise. But here's the disturbing detail. High society women knew the risks and kept using it anyway. The social pressure to look pale and delicate was so strong that they'd rather risk their lives than look ordinary. Some developed tremors, lost their hair, and others ended up with permanently damaged skin. Number 14. In the Victorian era, washing your hair was a rare thing, sometimes only once a month. To add shine, women used raw eggs or vinegar, methods that seem strange today. But the real problem was hair dye. Up until the 1860s, many dyes contained lead, a substance that doctors at the time had already documented as dangerous. Victorian medical journals recorded cases of women who lost their hair and suffered severe scalp injuries, all in the name of vanity. What's curious is that even knowing the risks, many kept using those products. The social pressure to look flawless spoke louder than doctors' warnings. Number 15. In Victorian England, taking a bath was practically an event. Wealthy families had metal bathtubs kept in the bedroom, and servants carried dozens of buckets of hot water up the stairs to fill them. A single bath could take more than an hour just to get ready. Meanwhile, in London's tenements, reality was very different. Entire families shared the same wash basin of water, passed from person to person without being changed. In some places, more than 20 people used the same water. Doctors at the time began to realize that diseases spread precisely in these environments, but it took decades before the government did anything about it. Number 16. In the Victorian era, sweat was a real problem and everyone knew it. Without deodorants like we have today, people had to handle it in other ways. The solution? Strong perfumes and colognes applied generously. But here's the curious detail. Lavender and other herbs were sewn into clothing, working like a kind of portable deodorant back then. What's most interesting is that nobody felt embarrassed about body odors the way we do today. It was simply part of life, accepted by everyone. The perfume industry grew precisely because of this practical need, not because of luxury. So the next time you complain about the heat in the summer, remember, at least you have options the Victorians couldn't even dream of. Number 17. In Victorian England, losing a child was almost expected. Records from the General Register between 1840 and 1850 show that about a third of children didn't make it to age 5. Homes were real death traps. wallpaper with arsenic, candles that released lead into the air, and water contaminated by sewage running through the streets. Diseases like cholera and typhus spread fast in neighborhoods where whole families shared a single room. Parents knew they had to baptize early because many babies didn't survive their first weeks. This brutal reality explains why so many Victorian families commissioned post-mortem portraits of their young children. Number 18. In Victorian England, drinking water was Russian roulette. In 1848, the government created the Public Health Act to fix the chaos of sewers and wells. It sounded like progress, right? Except the law had no teeth. Local councils could ignore it, and many did exactly that. Almost 30 years later, in 1875, entire families in the countryside were still drawing water from wells just meters away from cesspits and cemeteries. The result? Cholera and typhoid outbreaks that swept through villages. The truth is, reforms on paper don't save lives. While politicians debated, ordinary people paid the price with their own health. Number 19. Did you know that before 1880, even British royalty used chamber pots? That's right. Queen Victoria herself changed that when she installed the first modern bathrooms at Buckingham Palace. That royal decision wasn't just luxury, it was a quiet revolution. The middle class soon followed suit, and indoor plumbing with flush toilets started spreading through English homes. Before that, families relied on outdoor latrines and primitive systems that spread diseases like cholera and typhus. It may seem simple today, but back then it meant saving thousands of lives and setting the hygiene standards we still follow. Hygiene in the Victorian era shows a society struggling against its own limitations, with gradual reforms driven by crises. But that was only the beginning. The post-Victorian period sped up change. Which part of hygiene from that time stood out to you the most? Comment below and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next video.